upper and lower cross syndromes, and good treatment options to help with some of those corrective measures. So the main things we want to be aware of is that what postural changes are occurring, how can they contribute to the client's pain, and some very simple applications to apply in a massage session to help bring awareness to the client, because a massage session is not going to correct postural issues in one visit. It requires awareness and education of the client in order to really get long-term change or improvement. Okay. So just to cover, and I'm going to turn him square to the camera here. An upper cross syndrome is really characterized by a rounded thoracic spine, so if you can kind of collapse backward. Hyperextended neck, so what you see here is an exaggerated version of that, although it's not completely exaggerated that you won't actually see this on your clients. What also will happen is that the scapulas will start to drop around and forward as well too, into what we would really classify as a downwardly rotated scapula, and then you'll get medially rotated humerus as a result. So this is typical, again, maybe a little bit over exaggerated so that you can see what you'll tend to view posturally. Okay. So our goals with that is to understand where is the tissue being shortened down and where is the tissue being overstretched or inhibited. So we want to use the terms facilitated or overactive and inhibited or lengthened, weakened. Okay. And the whole goal is to try to get a better balance between those two so that our client can function optimally in gravity and prevent future injuries by constantly misusing the body that is not in the proper alignment for optimal functioning. So our goal for Ramon is to, and visually you can see and guess where areas are shortened and where areas are overstretched. Going to be shortened down here and shortened through here, front of the shoulder, back of the neck, weakened or inhibited through here in the neck extensors, inhibited and weak through the upper back. So where we have these muscles that are pulling forward into medial rotation will be inhibited with the lateral rotators. Muscles that are short and creating a deduction of the scapula, downward rotation, will be inhibited and weak in the muscles that retract or adduct the scapula and keep the the shoulders in better alignment through upwardly rotating them. So by correcting that and getting this head really lifted, we're trying to create height and lifting through here. Extension or opening of this whole space. It does not just help to get their shoulders squeezed back and their head rigid into a military posture. Tuck your chin back way sharply. Right? That is not a neutral posture either. This is how oftentimes people overcorrect their issues and create new problems. So go ahead and relax one more time. Actually, by doing that, he created a more neutral shoulder for himself. But what we want to do is really work to inhibit the facilitated muscles here and here, and activate or facilitate the inhibited muscles through here. Same thing in the lower trunk. A hyperlordotic or lower cross posture is classically seen as an excessive lumbar curve and an anterior pelvic tilt where the hips are rolled forward like this, creating an excessive lumbar curve in the back. Often you can see that creates buckling at specific levels in the spine, specifically at the thoracolumbar junction, but anywhere through here, a hyperextension occurring. And then again, an anterior pelvic tilt, which is where this pelvic bowl is dropping forward and down here. That will create hyperextension at the knees often to keep us balanced or upright. And often that results in a lot of compensating factors above too. Most people are not just going to walk around like Ramon's posture here, hyperextended through here. This is where the hyperkyphosis will Go ahead and round forward, collapse your chest. There we go. Keep your anterior tilt.
Oh, that's hard.
It's really uncomfortable, but this is how our muscles, how our tissue, how our fascia and ligaments, capsules all adapt. So this does feel comfortable and normal even though it's dysfunctional. Okay. So what we're going to correct here is we want to get this pelvic bowl a little more neutral. Take the excessive extension out of the spine. And again, all of this is, again, creating length and lift and openness so that everything aligns naturally and more neutrally and potentially just reduces the overall tension or discomfort. So let's get you supine on the table. You don't need to undress. You're just going to lay on top of the sheet so we can talk about treatment options. I'll give you some examples of how you can use bolstering to get the client's posture specifically different. So for someone who has an excessive lumbar curve, what we can do is reduce that lumbar curve by actually getting the joints into a position that will correct what's going on. So for example, if Ramon had an excessive lumbar curve where his pelvis is tilted and rocked forward, right? What I could do, since this whole bowl is tilted forward, is to try to tilt the bowl back and take the curve out of the lumbar spine. So I would be able to do that very simply by, I probably would not use a pillow this thick, but just for demoing sake, I'd probably use a squared, flat and rolled towel. I could slip this underneath the sacrum at the lower aspect to create a posterior pelvic tilt. So what that does is that flattens out the spine, rocks the hips backward. This creates a complete opposite position of where they are. I don't want him to end up like this standing, but what it does is over time as he's in this position, it's telling his nervous system, this is where your body should be. And so those that law of kinesiology that talks about soft tissue adaptation, we are applying that law here to create a new adaptation or a readaptation back to what is normal.
I have a quick question. Would the pillow or the roll towel be under the sacrum or inferior of the sacrum? So it's actually on the hamstring.
It's at the lowest aspect of the sacrum. So right in an anterior pelvic tilt from a lateral view, the sacrum will be tilted this way. I'm trying to tilt the sacrum back that way, which will create a nice bowl. Okay. I would probably also would not be treating my client necessarily clothed, so this would go all the way underneath the bottom sheet. It takes a little wrangling, but you get those into position. The body now has a good 20-25 minutes to adapt. That soft tissue can lengthen in the areas that where it is shortened. Work that I can do to also help facilitate that is opening up over the hip flexor space. So what I could do is pin at the ASIS, pin over the front of rec fem, and really just sit into a nice fascial stretch here. If you are working through clothing or over the sheet, you need to create a little bunch in between the hands so that your pressure goes in and stretches the tissue, not the clothing. So again, what that is doing is where the front of the hip is shortened down, it's opening up and separating that tissue. I can also do specific muscle work in an area if I found that TFL was short. TFL here was short or hypertonic. Rectus femoris is short or hypertonic. Psoas, in the rare occasion, is short and hypertonic. I can do work that helps to inhibit, lengthen, quiet, and you can actually use visualization with the client. So, Ramon, as you kind of take a nice deep breath in, as you exhale, I want you to feel and allow this to just soften and relax through here. Release the tension being held in this muscle. Just taking that awareness to that muscle quieted his hip flexors. Still some hypertonicity there, so I might say another deep breath in. And relax, relax, relax here. Good, good. I don't have to do a ton of stripping through that muscle. I've brought just awareness there, so he can send a new message to this muscle. You don't need to be facilitating or on right now. In terms of the abdominal tissue, he's actually going to be overstretched and weak through here. So the muscles that act in facilitation or inhibition are the abdominal muscles. The abdominal muscles and the hamstrings are going to be inhibited or stretched. And the hip flexors and the lumbar extensors will be facilitated or short. So if I know that the abdominals right now are overstretched or weak, we can do activation or things that stimulate this area. So I'm not necessarily digging in and doing really aggressive work, but my goal is not to relax these muscles. They are already inhibited. We want to facilitate. So what I can also have Ramon do is take a deep breath in and relax. Get into his transverse abdominis. Take a deep breath in and push my fingers out. Try and push my fingers out next time without pushing the belly. I want you to tighten these muscles here for me. Okay. Don't push your belly out. Squeeze or contract down this way. There we go. Now breathe. And as you breathe, push my fingers out. So we're just getting some activation here. Okay. We can also just get the rib cage moving because people will tend to be rigid through this area. And you also want to think about how hyperextended back shuts down the diaphragm posteriorly and really compresses my vital organs posteriorly. Right? So any of my internal organs really are not able to facilitate optimally as well because of the change in the abdominal compressive forces. Okay, so it's important that we get this back to a neutral place to get good full activation of the rib cage here. So go ahead and breathe in. Push into my thumbs when you breathe in. There we go. See the ribs expand open and out. I can also do it on the sides here. I also want this to come out laterally. So when you breathe in, good. And then we're also going to breathe down into the back of the ribs here too. Take another breath in. Feel this expand. Much different than what he just did the first two times because he was breathing everywhere anteriorly. So when you bring a tactile touch to the back of the ribs, breathe back into there, expand that canister backward. I'm just going to slip this up from underneath your hips. I would take a rolled up towel. This is a little too broad for my needs, but for today's demonstration, we'll just use this. But actually roll up a towel to be a little bit narrower than this. And if we want to address an upper cross syndrome in supine, I'm going to have my client sit up and place this along the thoracic spine and roll back down. The thoracic spine only. Okay. Now what that does is that lifts the thoracic spine forward, so someone who is rounded and hyperkyphotic, this pushes them up and open just a little bit to allow for gravity to open this space.
I have one quick question.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. So it's just a roll of towel right on the thoracic. Could it be right on the spine too, so that it allows it to move down this way?
This is what it is supposed to be. The towel will be rolled up along the thoracic spine this way.
Ah, okay.
This is. It doesn't feel like that because the pillow is too wide.
Right.
Sit up one more time though. This is too high for him. Go ahead and bring it back down. Okay.
Gotcha.
The head will end up in extension here, so you also want to Lift your head. Rest it down. Just keep this nice and open. This allows the neck to relax and drop back too. So someone with an anterior head carriage, we actually want the chin to tuck back just a bit. So open that up just a little bit more. Okay. Now, I have him exaggeratedly bolstered. But what this does is, again, it's going to send the body signals to allow gravity to pull this, draw this back, allow the back of the head to open up and lift. And I can use some, again, some visualization. As I'm working, Ramon, I want you to really be aware and conscious of how open and tall and lengthened out you feel right now, so that when you stand up, you bring that awareness to your upright posture as well. Okay. And then we want to inhibit the facilitated muscles, which in this case will be on the front of the shoulders here. So some really easy ways to do that would be to just lengthen out these muscles. Compression, joint mobilizations, doesn't matter how you do it, it's the concept of what needs to change in this muscle. And we need this to be longer and turned off or less facilitated as we work. His pec minor is hypertonic, so I could do the same thing I did with the hip here. Take a deep breath in and allow this to just soften here. You can do it. And not everyone's going to be able to really focus that quickly. You got to keep working at it to get it to go. In any case, we can still work to open this up. And just be mindful. If you really overstretch or traction someone, the body can guard against that or tighten up. So it's not about creating this big, massive movement. It's gentle, quieting this area. You can also use kinesiology principles of reciprocal inhibition. So I can actually have the muscles in the back to quiet the muscles in the front. So just go ahead and push your elbow and your arm into the table against me. Good. And so what I'm having him do is fire in the posterior aspect. Go ahead. Good, which quiets this and lengthens it out. Do it again. Don't engage here. Take a deep breath in. Focus all of that contraction right here at the shoulder. Good. You don't want them compensating by using other muscles as well. Okay. Again. Push. I mean, look at the difference there. I'm laughing because it's so cool. So I would do the same thing to the other side. What you want to take away from this concept is that it can be applied in any type of postural deviation. It's not just about the typical hyperkyphosis, hyperlordosis. It is anytime I see a position that is not optimal or neutral, I can use these ideas to understand which tissues are involved and what's going on in those tissues and how to create change that brings about the most benefit to the client. So why am I doing what I'm doing? When you really question that and come up with an answer for that, you're more effective as a therapist. Take a deep breath in. Push again. Not doing a lot of contraction, so if the client's trying to really manpower it, that's going to ease off a bit. When you get up from your treatment room, I really want you to feel like this is open and expanded. Your shoulders are nice and wide. Same concept can apply in throne.
Excuse me. Sorry.
So for my client here, someone who is hyperkyphotic, their chin may appear to be pushed way into the face cradle. The upper back may be excessively rounded through here, and the scapulas may appear to be extremely rolled forward. And so the idea is to facilitate that inhibited area and to inhibit the areas that are short. Okay. So for example, with him, I want to kind of wake up or facilitate through here. So I can just do some more stimulating techniques just to open up these muscles. So what we can start with are techniques that stimulate the attachments of these muscles. But my goal is not to do long, relaxing strokes. I'm not trying to create length through these muscles. These muscles that stimulate through here. Perhaps it's PostTreatment. That plays back. Perhaps I say, Ramon, I want you to take a deep breath in, hold it, and just draw your shoulders down and back. Keep your shoulders wide as you do that. Good. And relax out of that. If I want to also use the tissue remodeling concept, we can continue with the bolstering idea, and that is get the joint in the position. Go ahead and relax your shoulder down. Get the shoulder of the client in the position that it really needs to be in, so we can retrain these neural pathways to say, this is where you're supposed to be. So not only did I facilitate him by getting these muscles fired, but we're also putting the joint in a position that it needs to be in so that when he stands up, it transfers into an upright posture. I would do that on both sides here, as long as the client could tolerate it. Same thing when the client is hyperextended through here. I could place the bolster underneath the ASIs. You see all I'm going to do is just basically get a lift here. You can see that it flattens out the lumbar spine just a bit, or reduces the curve, I should say, reduces the excessive curve here, and allows his low back to just soften up and relax. And again, I would probably tell him to breathe into this space and allow the muscles here to relax under my fingers. And he does it pretty easily. Again, most clients are not going to be able to do that right away, so you want to keep working with them on that concept so that when they go home, you can say, these are the muscles you need to cue to relax. And put your hands back there and breathe into that space. Feel them soften. Besides being overstretched here, he'll be hypertonic or short here, so inhibited, facilitated. That's going on, but some of this area will be facilitated, some will be inhibited. But we'll say in general terms, this area is going to be inhibited or lengthened. So again, stimulating techniques. You really need to take a look at the tissue tension through here to understand what's going on directly at the hip. That's really kind of an entirely different video. Gentle movements. Just tell the body to soften and relax. I'm not doing really tough tractions here. It's just quieting the body. Reducing guarding, which is a result typically. All right. We didn't talk about opening up the back of the neck, but I would do techniques that just elongate, decompress. You can do work directly under here. In supine, I could gently traction him. And then let's get you up and standing for just a minute. Doing okay? Yes. Okay. actually did a really nice job of neutralizing through his shoulders here. He does not have a hyperkyphosis of the thoracic spine, sorry. He actually has a very flattened out thoracic spine. So with him, I might have him kind of not collapse his chest, but just feel this lengthen and open a bit. So push back just a little bit through here. Push back here. Push back. Push back. There we go. And now lengthen, lift up, lift up, lift up. Good. To me, the biggest or best instruction is not to squeeze your shoulders back and down. Or tuck your chin. It's really, imagine there's a string at the top of your head, right here, lifting you up. Don't push your chin out. It's tall, we're lifting tall.
It's training. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. And I have no clue if I have the right posture.
Just breathe into here. What you shouldn't feel is that your body is really tense right now to hold in that position. It may feel uncomfortable or unnatural because you are retraining your body. But you shouldn't feel like you're squeezed tight. It should be extension, lengthening. Breathing through here. Forward and backward. Good. Here. Soft through here. Okay. Those are some basic approaches to treating upper and lower cross syndrome. Again, concepts that can be adapted to any type of postural dysfunction, and involving the client in the process in the session will get you the longest